Tani, ftoj rektorin t'ja ndaj titullin Dr. Honoris Causa, Profesor Dr. Paul Foster.
Më lejoni që të lexoj në origjinal edhe procesin dhe procedurën e ndarjes së kësaj mirënjohje dhe këtij çmimi. Domini decanes, domini membra ex sanatorium, domini professores, domini civitates, domini discipuli, nomen candidatis universitatis studiorum, Universitas Europea Orientalis Meridionalis, pro titulo doctoris honoris causa est, Academus Paul Foster. Academus Paul Foster in Universitatem Studiorum confirmam atque omnia iura sigillo munita vos in manus trado. Spondeo.
Te dashur miq, jashtë shumë i lumtur që jam kthyer këtu në Tetov në Maqedoni. Dragi prijatelji, ja sam srećan da pak da biram tukaj vo Makedonija I vo Tetovo. Dear friends, I'm so happy to be back here in Tetovo in Macedonia. I've traveled a long way from my home in Billings, Montana to be here today in person and to help you celebrate 20 years of the Southeast European University. I am honored to receive this award, and I really want to stress that I am so touched to receive this, but I receive it in the name of all the people that I've worked with over the past 20 years. As a coach of basketball in the YMCA, we always say there's no I in team. I left the speech there, sorry. All right, so 20 years ago, and I'm back. What a pleasure it is to be here among so many friends and familiar faces, all of us tied to the fate and success of this illustrious university. I promise not to take too much of your time, but I do want to take this opportunity to say a few words. I first heard of the CU University project in the late summer of 2001, but as others had mentioned, it had been circulating in university and academic circles for some time. Of course, the events of September 11th, 2001 changed the arc of history, but we must not forget that Macedonia had undergone a terrible year of armed conflict in 2001. So it really was a year of crisis throughout the world. In that year, in August, I and my young family with my wife Elena were evacuated from Skopje in the summer of 2001, and really in the darkest days of the conflict. Safely back in Montana, I received a phone call from Mr. Charles Reefsnyder at Indiana University, who was preparing a grant proposal to USAID to support a new university that was going to be founded in Tetovo. Charlie asked, would I consider returning there to Tetovo to lead Indiana University's efforts? Charlie, I said, I'm not sure if you realize it, but Tetovo is very difficult. It's burning. People are leaving Tetovo at that time. I don't think there's going to be any new universities soon. But for those who know Charlie, he's very patient, he's very kind, but he's very determined. So he assured me that I would not have to return anytime soon, but then came September 11th, and the events of history unfolded. But after September 11th, I, like many people of our generation throughout the world, really were confronted with two different impulses or two different directions in our life. Number one, I thought I should move to eastern Montana, to some really small town, and hunker down there for 10 years or 20 years until this crisis blew over. Or number two, I thought maybe I should increase my engagement with the world, using my skills in education and knowledge of Macedonia and the region, and get on the first plane possible back to Macedonia to help in any way that I could. I chose option 2, and within days I received clearance to enter the country in an official capacity. I was back in Skopje, meeting almost daily with Max van der Stoel, OSCE, USAID, and EU supporters. I was traveling across the front lines daily from Skopje to Tetovo to meet Director Aladin Abazi, because he was a director at that time. He became a rector a little bit later. In downtown Tetovo, a city well known to me as the birthplace of my children's grandmother. On this muddy campus, we rushed to open the doors and to do the real business of the university, teaching our students. But as we did, we would often listen to the sound of automatic gunfire in the hills above Tetovo. And my friends here would say, you know, that's the way we celebrate. That's the way we celebrate weddings, in fact. So to all those people that celebrated weddings, the newlyweds of 2001, I think we should honor them as well. So looking back, it also seems that we were very idealistic. But together we were very innovative in our goals. Remember, this was a time before smartphones, before Twitter, before Tesla, not Nikola Tesla, but Tesla, the car, before Google, before Bitcoin, before blockchain, before NFTs. Still, together with a team of educational professionals, we set forward to help solve the fundamental issues of equity and access to higher education so all citizens of Macedonia had the opportunity to earn their college degrees. I had lofty ideals and goals as well. How to depoliticize higher education. This was always met with laughter, always. How to depoliticize higher education, you know? Just, it's a joke. But others were a bit more realistic. How to create study programs to assist in building a national consensus. We had some goals that were within reach, like how to create opportunities for Macedonians to learn Albanian language and for the Albanians to further their knowledge of Macedonian, and to bring both groups, along with our Roma, Bosnian, Turkish, and foreign students, together in the same classroom in the medium of English. How to create programs suitable to the local conditions, but able to produce graduates for a country we knew that would come into being, stable, multi-ethnic, tolerant, and democratic. What unites all these innovations was a radical idea. At the center of the university was not the faculty, not the administrations, not the football team, but the students. And for a teaching university, such as C University was at that time, the most fundamental relationship was the teaching and learning between faculty and students, and the student outcomes that's how we would define success. Our support for the students did not end with graduation, but continued as they built careers in public service, private business, and graduate programs across the region and across the world. But at the same time, this was a reciprocal relationship, and I learned so much here in Tetovo about higher education, especially as it concerns a university teaching what we call in the United States first-generation students, meaning they're the first person in their family to go to the university or to go to college. These were heady times in Macedonia, and indeed in Europe, where the European Union had launched an ambitious and far-reaching program of educational reform called the Bologna process. The goals of some of these reforms were well known to me, and in particular, the idea of student mobility, or study abroad, as we call it in the United States, and defining specific and measurable learning outcomes for classes, for courses, and for entire programs transparently, so that the students and their parents would know exactly the knowledge, the skills, and the way of thinking that they would master in the program. When I finally left Tetovo in 2012 and accepted a position at Montana State University Billings, I was going to return to my home and to apply the lessons that I had learned here But I was a bit surprised, however, honestly, to learn that some of the American institutions were facing some of these very same issues that we faced here in Tetovo. Mounting cost of instruction, 4-year degrees that took sometimes 6 years to earn, distrust of authority, politicization of higher education, to name a few. At C University in the early days, we were confronted often by skeptics who could not fathom that a university could be private. If it were, then it had to have owners who would control and profit from the business of education. On the other hand, if C University accepted public funds, then it would be a public university, subject to the number of regulations from the government, but also political parties. Or would it be something in between, public-private, a university sui generis, unique university? Then there were the endless struggles to fend off interference from outside forces, from forces that sought to merge C University with other entities for our own good. The nature and mission of C University has been fiercely debated over the past 2 decades, but to me it is clear that C University transcends national borders in its mission, service, teaching, and learning. I do want to acknowledge that C University at its core is an international university. This is also manifested in its language policy, its student body, its diverse faculty, the sources of funding for the past 20 years, and the group of internationalists who came together on this campus 20 years ago in some very dark days to found the university. So, in conclusion, to my friends here at C University, and to all here who have contributed so much to your success, I wish you a happy anniversary, 20 years of life, 20 years of progress, 20 years of delivery of high-quality international education to our students and to our future leaders. I'm sure the university, with all of our support, will continue to prosper for another 20 years. Thank you, Rector Bigetti. Thank you to the students, the university board, the university senate, and the faculty for presenting me with this honor. Thank you.